Okay, so now we get to weight, and with weight we want to dictate size and how weight could be combined to form levels of hierarchy that indicate the levels of importance to the viewer. So in this case, it refers to the overall mass or boldness of a typeface, so going from light, medium, semi-bold to bold. In this case, we take a look at a logotype with Sarah being the first read in bold and then Ray, the second read, with a much lighter weight typeface, and then interior design being the third read. So we definitely want to read her first name first and then last name and then what she does for a living. In this particular example, we see how weight is being distributed throughout this table of contents. We have the numbers of those different sections of the book, then we have the names of those chapters, and then inside those chapters we have different subchapters, and we have the title and then the author. And so we can see how weight is very much so the type of element that forces us to read things in a certain way. Combine that with the overall sense of scale that we're seeing. So here we have a much larger, or I would say a just a bit more larger layout for the number and the name um, of the section in comparison to what we're seeing here with the name of the article and the author, and then the page title or the page number. So this level of contrast between the two gives us the indication that our first read is going to be right here, our second read is going to be right here. So this is all being established by using a bit of scale and a bit of weight to our different levels of hierarchy. And here we have a menu where we have the name of the restaurant and what kind of menu this is, and then we have the different kinds of categories within the menu, and then the names of each dish or drink, and then we have in much lighter text the ingredients of each dish or drink. So this is also a good example to take a look at for your recipes, how you want to block out your information if you're doing the denotative approach, where you say step 1, step 2, step 3, and combine the different sections all together on the page. But you might want to also take a look at your ingredients as being one particular format right here, and then your pull quote in another section right here, and then your directions could be in another section right here as well. And then you would want to add your name and probably a subtitle for the top or bottom or middle, whichever area your text of your title is going to be. So this would be a good example of seeing how you're blocking out certain kinds of information by using those guides and by using scale too, and the weight of each particular section of those different kinds of categories that you're putting. Then we have color, and color is the most basic characteristic, and it conveys an emotion or mood to our eyes and brain. And it also plays an important role in the overall visual experience of the design. So it links and it separates and it unifies. So an example of so is when we take a look at color on this particular spread, and we see the pull quote being not only one of the largest areas of type, but we also see it being in a different color and it's underlined. And we also see color being used in certain areas of this article where it's physically highlighting certain areas of the article. And we're also seeing it in pull quote fashion like so, and we're seeing it as a title as well. So color is also another way to create this type of hierarchy where you want your reader to read a certain area first and to focus on different areas of information on the article where it tends to be the most interesting or the most important information that is being housed. It's another example of color where we see in this particular article maybe the different areas of the article, or the different areas of this newspaper that highlight different articles or different types of areas of information. We see a subtitle here also in different colors. So we're looking at color also as a way to highlight and to bring attention to certain areas of information on our page. In this particular instance, we have color being used on the background, and the type is pretty neutral in black and white. So this too can also be another indication of hierarchy. But it needs to make sense in a way where the background is pretty neutral in a way that it does not conflict with how we read our information and how clearly we're using certain areas of color on the page. And then we get to contrast. Contrast suggests emphasis, in which in turn suggests the relationship relative to the importance of content and can control text, how it's being read. So here we have contrast with the color of Chicago being in white and just how large this area of text is in comparison to the overall cityscape. And we also take a look at the contrast between the grays and the whites and then the lighter grays as so. And we also see contrast with the white type against the darker suit in the background. And we also see contrast in terms of size. So his town is in a much larger scale compared to the rest of the information over here, which is pretty much going to be the different articles we're going to find in this magazine. So contrast could be achieved through a contrast in scale or a contrast in color. And here we can see contrast in color and in weight. So taking a look at the black type over color on a colored background. And then we see the contrast of weight, daughter of the land, in a bold weight, and then the different ingredients and the supplemental information in a much lighter weight, right? And then we look at orientation. Orientation is how the type sits on the baseline, and it could be vertical, horizontal, or diagonal. So this is an example of what orientation can look like with these specific kind of title treatments. Now we don't want everything to be on a diagonal because it's just very difficult to read, right? So if it's different parts of the title, this works, but we don't want everything to be on a diagonal, have too many different moves going on. Now we are working with connotative layouts, but then we need to also pull back and say, okay, where have we gone too far that our reader can no longer read the information that we're communicating? So we need to make sure that we draw a specific kind of balance where we're still expressing the information we have connotatively, but we're still able to have our reader read the information too. Another example of orientation, sometimes where the title is stacked on its side, and you want to make sure it's just one element that's stacked and not everything. As you can see here, it's just one or two words that are stacked, and then the rest of the information is pretty straightforward and neutral so that our viewers can still read certain areas of wayfinding where they can find things. So in this case, this looks like a museum where they see a gallery, or they see where the elevators are, or they see where the cafe is. So we want to make sure most important information still stays the same way because we still need to read it. Okay? And here are some successful examples when we take a look at orientation. So here we take a look at a certain level of hierarchy, which in this case being Futura, the title of a specific font and the date in which it was published. And we are also looking at how structured this layout is from top to bottom and how nicely it follows a grid. So taking a look at our recipes and how well they have that specific function on the page and ease of readability will definitely make our page stand out in terms of white space, in terms of balance, in terms of overall unity, but also most importantly is how easy we're able to read this, yet still create an interesting layout like this that's very nice to read and pleasant to read, and also just has a nice sense of white space and breathing room. And here are some examples of orientation as well. Some more over here, and as we can still see, different levels of hierarchy being established by this sense of color being used, like by highlighting certain areas, like so in black, and using black as a way to highlight. And then we have the supplemental information reversed out on white. An overall sense of control and sense of, I want to say, structure. So we still have this very nice structure going on the page, and the page has this nice ample white space around it. So another example where we see different levels of read. We're still maintaining a sense of structure here because we're following a grid, as you can see, but we're taking our grid and we're playing around with it by placing our paragraphs not necessarily next to our baseline or the next line in order, but we're just playing around with our paragraph structures, yet we're still maintaining structure of our grid, right? So we still know as the reader where our eye goes next. So in this case, we see the title in the middle of the page and our eye somehow starts to go this way and starts to read more of the information that way and go down more. So we have a very controlled sense of how we're supposed to be reading this layout. It's another example of how the title is being used. Some areas of the type is being cut, and we're orienting different areas of the paged information on the sides like so, yet we're still following the grid that is being established by those cutout letter forms and formulating our overall layout on the page. And here we have the subtitle, and here we have some more information down here. So very simple, straightforward, overall interesting way of how we're using title. Now notice that there's just one area that they're becoming a lot more experimental with, which is the title. Nothing else on the page. It seems pretty simple and straightforward. So sometimes we just want one move. We don't need to go crazy with a lot of different moves to scale back and say, okay, this is interesting enough for me to read it, but I still want to read my information functionally. It's another example of what looks like a timeline. We have the title, we have the subtitle right here. So the title and subtitle have pretty much a good dominant space on this layout. And then we have the supplemental information being the dates over here on the side, and we have the body copy and some different layers of information here which pertain to the dates. So overall, very structured, very easy to kind of navigate over on the page in terms of what we read first. So the title, the subtitle, the body copy next, and then the dates. Here's another example of layering text where we see the contrast in weight and the contrast in scale between the larger text and the much smaller text. And as you can see, there's only one specific move that's happening on the page, and it's the title right here that has some of that interesting connotative approach going on. The rest of the information is pretty simple and straightforward for ease of readability. So I hope this presentation helps you figure out which areas of your homework you need to fix in terms of how to best manage hierarchy on your page and how to achieve it in a specific way that helps your reader still read the information of your recipes. Yet we still want to maintain in our connotative layouts an expression that tells us a little bit more about our recipes. All right, I will see you in the following video.